This is the first time that this is being done, and we look forward to many more discussions in larger and of course smaller formats that will be taking place. You have seen the structure of the program which has been circulated, and from our side, as you will have noticed that we have mentioned the name of some of the senior government speakers during the course of the day in the sessions that we are going to have. Will be all in very discussion format, and we would conclude the day with the Honorable Finance Minister coming in for giving her address, before which she hears the day's deliberations. So we are indeed very, very delighted to have this phenomenal response and audience, and also the panels that we have during the course of the afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, we know the phenomenal GCC story which has emerged in India, the type of focus that we have seen by our government, and we have seen the response globally. And this is, we think, the most opportune moment for us to discuss the subjects that have been listed in the program. Several contours of this collaborative policy between the different stakeholders as we look forward to a policy framework, and this collaboration really makes us, as if I may say, setting the context of this first opening plenary is to really first maybe talk about the talent development, while us as a country, India's 10 talent pool is indeed unmatched. The demands for the GCC, that changes rapidly. It is changing, and from legacy coding to emerging domains like cloud native platforms, embedded software, ethical AI, and advanced analytics. The governments have also been very, very proactive, and they have made significant investments through skilling missions and centers of excellence. But what's needed probably now is a greater collaboration between industry and help Udela, in fact, enable hands-on exposure and build deep specializations. What our focus has been also to see how we can get into the tier 2 cities. Another national level talent development platform, which is backed jointly by the government and industry, that could really be an important game changer. Ladies and gentlemen, the second issue has been infrastructure, and as GCCs, they keep expanding much beyond the metros, and I talked about it. The role of our public infrastructure, our urban planning, all of that is critical, and plug and play workspaces, robust power, and data connectivity, livability, of course, and mobility. All of this comes in, and that's again a point which we have emphasized before. The third, of course, is innovation. We have been as a country a vibrant startup ecosystem, pretty well known, understood, and the really expanding R&D capacity that gives us a strong foundation for this collaborative innovation, and national policy that really could create a formal mechanism for the GCC startup partnership. And again, innovative platforms, shared IP frameworks, government-matched co-developed grants. Finally, of course, a very paramount issue of paramount importance, governance. And a national GCC council, maybe with the participation of our senior leadership from the country, our key ministers, our state governments, our policymakers in the central government. Industry leadership is something that we have been deliberating on and wanted to put it up for discussion. So the idea is just not to scale what's already at works, but also to unlock some of our new opportunity areas and about cementing the position of our country in India, not just as host to GCCs, but partner in this global transformation. So with that, I really wanted to once again welcome this very strong opening session panel that we have, and indeed grateful for them to have spared this time for this deliberation. I would really request all of you to really join me in welcoming this very, very strong leadership panel that we have from the Government of India present here on the dais. Ladies and gentlemen, what we will do, we will have our comments by our four policy makers and then open it up for some to our discussants who are sitting senior here. Mr. K.K. Singh, please. Would like to hear from them to come up here.
Dignitaries on the dais, off the dais, and others gathering present here, especially members of the CIA. I have been told to give remarks at the end of the program, but I have been told to start. So anyway, I will take just 3-4 minutes to start with from cost arbitrage to innovation. Powered by emerging technologies, India's GCC landscape is rapidly shifting. And GCC's impact India's economy by creating high-value jobs. Around 1.9 million jobs are there. Fostering skill development and also facilitating knowledge transfer to service providers to GCC. This is what GCC from our perspective. As far as global scenario is concerned, you see we have a many competitive countries like Mexico, China, Philippines, Malaysia, Poland, other Eastern European countries. And where we have a strength, we are competitive. Apart from this cost competitiveness, we have a strength in diversified skill, talent pool, and supportive policies. So ultimately, it's a talent we all know. So most focus what we have to do is on talent. So because we have a lot of consultation from industry, each and everybody has suggested about talent. The government has to focus on talent. How we can create a funnel for the GCCs, not from GCC, all MNCs and all industries and ecosystem. So current status, I think all of you are aware that around 1800 plus GCCs are there. Mostly concentrated in 6 locations, 30% in Bangalore, around 19-20% in Hyderabad, followed by Delhi region, that is around 15%, 12% in Mumbai, 10% in Pune, 9% in Chennai. So around 95% of GCCs are located concentrated in 6 locations, and only 5% in remaining emerging cities. So challenge is also there how to expand it. So in one of the discussion, the minister sir was present. So he told that normally concentration is this kind of industry normally growing in particular small locations. So how to, it will be a challenge for us to expand them in tier 2 cities. So but anyway, that was I think approach. That's why our honorable finance minister has in her budget speech has suggested to frame out a policy or make guidelines for the states so that they can enhance, accelerate the growth of GCCs. So we have 2 aspects now. As a METI, this assignment has been given to METI, as a line ministry. So our first of all is request is that from all I think I'm happy to see such a large gathering. So my request from CII will be that to please get any of the suggestions out of, you have done a lot of work in that. Already you have prepared a draft policy for GCC, but even though any kind of suggestion out of the box thinking which can support making formulating these kind of policy where we can issue a guidelines to the states. Apart from that, any actionable part on behalf of union government, central government, any suggestions, definitely we are also working upon that. And it is pertinent to mention here, and Sir present here, that all these GCCs are basically driven by the backbone of IT. That is the only IT, I think it's the only IT solution and talent available in India. That's why these industries are opting as a destination point for them to set up their GCC centers. So our approach will be there to have a benchmarking of best practices in these 6 locations where those states are there. They have their own policies. So based on that, we will create a benchmark guidelines for other states so that they can also follow and have ecosystem, have a potential so that gradually GCCs can also opt for setting up their centers. But we have seen that hardly green GCCs are opting for these tier 2 cities, mostly brown, but GCCs are opting for. But yes, we should have a reason, because we have to bring a approach where inclusiveness is there, so that all state, all emerging cities. As for the NESCOM and Deloitte report, we had around 25 cities has been identified as emerging hubs. So our focus will be there to guide them so that they can also have a potential. And nuances experts are there in CI reports. I have seen that a lot of final nuances has been included to guide the industry, guide the government also. I have seen even guidance for the government. You have trained in that draft policy. That will be helpful for us in formulating that framework for statement. So at the end, I would in India and expanding their base. And I am confident that these initiatives, with all of your support, like all stakeholders present here, CII is there, will certainly place India at the top of the global GCC ecosystem, effectively contributing in meeting India's aspiration to become developed nation by 2047. Thank you so much, and please be in touch. आपसे हमें बहुत कुछ पता करना है, आप एक्सपर्ट्स हैं, हर सेक्टर से हैं CII. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Singh, for making those opening comments for the day and not really putting in the last word, but we will come back to you to also during this session if the time permits. With that, I'll come to Mr. Sanjay Babu, the member of Income Tax CBDT, for his opening remarks.
First gathering in the audience as well as the esteemed members on the dais. It's indeed a privilege to be part of this summit, which I must say, when I got to know about it, it was a very exciting summit to look forward to, because this is a completely new topic. As far as taxation goes, I can imagine there's a lot of expectation in the stakeholders. At the outset, I can say that it is undeniable that GCC is a sector of economy which is definitely growing at a pace which will far exceed even the expectations of CII, as they have mentioned in their brochures. We are looking at a very robust growth in the next 5 to 10 years, and the dynamics are changing. As it is, this sector contributes nearly 2% of the GDP, and its employment figures, I think, now are something like 30 million or 25 million, and this is expected to grow in the next few years. Keeping that in mind, you know, the agency which is there to enable growth of industry in any sector, make it easy to do business in those sectors. We at CBDT are fully alert and alive to this future potential of this sector. I can imagine that there would be some concerns, especially regarding transfer policy pricing issues, because the nature of activity in this sector has completely undergone a phenomenal change in the last, let's say, a couple of decades. I would say end of 90s, when this kind of, at that time it was called outsourcing, and now it has moved 30 years later, where the input given by GCC is very complex. It is very complex and very dynamic across borders. When it comes to areas such as design, innovation, back-end services, as well as certain inputs in engineering, there is a matrix of valuation in the services and products that GCC is able to provide to its principals. And in that sense, it becomes a very complicated issue when it comes to transfer pricing. I can well imagine these issues will be flagged by all the stakeholders, and I would encourage CII to engage with CBDT in enabling us to move forward along with you to further improve and strengthen this sector, because this sector is going to become very important in the economic growth of the country. It is also going to be an enabler for India to position itself as a kind of global business hub spanning across various sectors of industry. Some of the issues which I am sure will be flagged during the course of the day when it comes to the tax regimes are to give some kind of special treatment to the sector. Currently, I'm not aware of whether there was any proposal from the industry, from the stakeholders in this regards, but I'm eagerly looking forward to what inputs I get and receive today. And let us work on this together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Babu. Now it's my pleasure to move on to the Department of Economic Affairs and request the Secretary, Anuradha Thakur, to speak. And there's a lot of expectation, of course, around the entire policy ecosystem, making India an attractive destination, and how do we really bring up in the global economic landscape as to how we could work together. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Anandji. It's really my privilege and pleasure to be here, and to see such a full house is extremely encouraging. All the distinguished guests on the dais, as well as very distinguished people in this room, including issues more or less seem to have been identified. And the reason that CII has helped bring everyone together, for which I hugely commend them, because it is extremely timely, is that we have an opportunity to sit together and discuss key areas where more can be done, and what are those policy imperatives that can be identified which could help the sector grow further. We have seen the sector grow, and we know how many, more than 1800 GCCs apparently now operate out of India, as per the report that CII has kindly given us. We know how it started. Most of what I would say actually is almost like preaching to the choir. All of you know these facts. The way I was thinking about this is what we already know. I just put it in about 3-4 bunches, so that the flow could be in such a way that each of those actually points to an area where we could work together, but we need exact action points. What should be allowed to grow organically, where a fillip is needed, and which are those areas of collaboration where government or industry needs to come forward and engage further. So we know that starting with the beginning of the offshoring, when Texas Instruments first set up office in Bangalore in 1985, we have now come to this point where we are amongst the biggest GCC centers in the world. From BPOs to captive centers to global in-house centers to now being called GCCs. That journey is explained in those terminologies itself. The large engines, the GCCs being like a huge engine of revenue, of growth, of employment, that is what attracts our attention, particularly now that it has achieved so much of a scale. And the kind of range of services that GCCs are now engaging with, product development, operations, BPOs, engineering, software, these are all areas in which you all are already working and are growing further in diverse ways. The point that came to my mind was, what is it that we have done? What is it that we have done right that has enabled such a big audience today to come together, which shows the scale of operations already in this sector? And I would feel that we identified a couple, which I'll just go over. Again, nothing that you all don't know. The key drivers of GCCs in India, like Mr. Mishra also said, one of them is the strong infrastructure both physical and digital, which has been there. And strategic interventions such as the Digital India and policies which have been taken over the last 10 years for ease of doing business, including streamlined approvals, licensing processes for GCCs, better risk and regulatory environment over the years, initiatives like streamlined tax regulations, compliance procedures, all of this together has built up this segment, which has now come to this. Besides this, like again it was said, even now GCCs are focused in particular states. So we need to study what those states did better or did earlier in advance, whether it is Bangalore, whether it is Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Telangana. We know that those states had specific policies both on the physical infrastructure and digital infrastructure side. They also had certain regulatory policy initiatives which has helped GCCs conglomerate over there and further grow. Whether we need to disturb that or add more is something that we need to deliberate today, perhaps a bit of both. Similarly, I think the innovation and startup ecosystem and all the fillip that has been given to it over the last couple of years is a very key factor which has led us to this point and which also informs us about where more work needs to be done. And one of the things that was spoken of, the availability of talent. The numbers which are before me is that we have about 2.1 million STEM graduates coming out annually and a huge and diverse workforce in which more than 35% participation is of women and the median age group is very young, it's about 28 years. This has provided a fertile ground and it has expanded the reach of GCCs. In this regard, I think what is important, and Secretary Labour, Madam will speak more about this. I have a very small experience in this regard in my previous Ministry of Corporate Affairs, where we were trying to work on the PM internship scheme, in which industry was encouraged to put out internship offers, and children were encouraged to come on the portal and take part in it. Unfortunately, GCCs could not participate to the extent that we had expected, and we found the decision making probably could have been faster in that. 3 or 4 centers, or I think Mr. Mishra said about 9 centers, are those that have the bulk of the GCCs. They have already started spreading to tier 2 towns. So what are those things that we need to create? What is the framework that is needed to create? What are the kind of dialogues the center can have with the state governments to push this geographically as well, because many of the states where you have a bulk of talented human resource probably don't have the bulk of the GCCs which could be there, which could be another way of cost, being competitive on cost. Similarly, the sectors have now expanded, like I said at the beginning. We are no longer just a recipient of work transitions and core business functions. We are also expanding to engineering, R&D, and the focus is on AI and emerging tech. So on this, what are the other areas which probably need to be brought into our ITIs? Are there specialized engineering courses which need to be introduced? What are the areas in which we already have a certain amount of expertise but more needs to be built in? What are the kind of things industry can do to build that, those kind of talent, those kind of experiences for children to come forward? I think these are the areas, and I'm sure that today there will be discussion on all of these points. And going forward, a lot of the GCCs contribute to their parent organization success.
In terms of aviation, defense, electronic design, and also of course in terms of the emerging areas, which is in terms of quantum and things like that. I just move into four key factors. I think we've spoken about talent, infrastructure, location, and IT and the ecosystem. But just what I thought would be very important is, one is, if you look at the success factors in terms of talent, 68% of the GCCRs are new generation roles. This is no more, this is in product development, this is in cloud, and not necessarily traditional, just only finance and accounting or support areas. Second is, even now only 43% of our industrial, the graduates are ready and not necessarily have the most important thing is also senior leadership roles. This is going to move from 6,500 to 30,000 people. So we need to have a right pipeline as well. Couple of things in terms of infrastructure. Clearly, there's a digital first infrastructure that is doing, not just the physical, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Location capability, I think the tier 2 cities offer quite a bit, but I think there needs to be infrastructure and other things that need to improve in the tier 2 cities. And of course, in the ecosystem, which is very important, I'll talk a little bit about that as well. But just a few quick pointers. I think what we've said is that on the talent side, there needs to be a talent acceleration hub. So really, acceleration hubs that can bridge the gap between the universities and what are the requirements. So really doing that and using areas like AI, we spoke about AI, to actually help in skilling and reskilling programs. Second is to have a national digital talent platform, which in some sense gives you like a skill passport, where your passport basically says everything, it has been verified and it's easy to onboard people. The second bit, which we think is a very important one, is creation of digital economic zones. Now, these are not just economic zones or GCCs, but you should have GPU-based data centers located, you should have academia, you should have startups based there, and create an Uber kind of situation where you can actually have co-located working spaces. So people don't need to invest in every infrastructure. There has to be plug and play. If tier 2 has to come up, you need to have plug and play where you immediately go and do things. The third bit is in terms of really the regulatory environment. I think there needs to be a national single level window clearance. For a GCC, if they have to take 15, 16 approvals, including, let's take pollution control, these are services. Can we ensure the Singapore model of where, for example, they take the clearance and maybe after 5-6 months they get an audit done, but not necessarily stop you. So I think that is one thing. I think CBDT, I think you clearly spoke about in terms of both in terms of the advanced pricing as well as safe harbor. I think that is very important as well. And finally, just what we believe is in terms of from an investment promotion, I think there should be a clear focus on whom to target, which is existing GCCs, as well as, for example, in terms of those who don't have GCCs. Second is traditional markets, but also newer markets. If you look at our Asia Pacific market, it's only 7% of GCCs. And finally, I think there should be an investment facilitation with clearly a national GCC council, along with support cells, which is for investment promotion, which is for talent, and some of the other areas, regulatory reforms. And of course, an advisory group. So I think if we can have a plug-and-play infrastructure with single window clearances, I think we will see a lot more focus. This, as I mentioned, this is going to be one of the biggest areas for India, because many areas, we will take some time, but this is one area in terms of GCC and capability. I think we can be the world's, not just the back office, but we can be the world's front office. With that, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roman, for those last words. But I think between you and Gunjan, it has been a great capture of the feedback that we have received from the industry. Thanks for that leadership. And I would really like to thank our policymakers for giving such a great start to this. And I'd like to thank the secretaries, Secretary Labour, Secretary DEA, CBDT, and of course my team. This was quite a heavy start. We have seen the glimpse of what we are trying to work with the industry, and we'd like to really put up to you that we are able to continue with this engagement and this two-way communication between our ministries and ourselves, as well as the state governments which are going to participate in the sessions to come. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to draw this particular opening session to close. We invite all of you for lunch, and we get back to this room quickly after that. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
that, we are now
Mr. Sunil Batwal, Dr. Neeraj Mittal. Very, very warm welcome to both of you to this very important session. You know, we have had several ministries participating through the day and many state governments participating in various sessions during the course of the day. But I do not know whether because of timing or because of any design that the Department of Telecom and the Department of Commerce was kept for the penultimate session before the Finance Minister to two very, very important institutions, two important policy ministries, two very important stakeholders in the discussions that we have on the subject that's been going on. Both complicated, yet both extremely critical, and I do not have to labor on that point much more. But ladies and gentlemen, the discussions that we've had so far, all of you have participated, have touched upon many areas of what could be the evolving national GCC policy, or when we had discussions on the scope of the progress made in some of the states, some of the early states and the others who are working on it thereafter, how we have been seeing and the emergence of some of the GCC hubs across the country. One important discussion also took place was how is it going from tier 1 to the tier 2, tier 3 cities, and the discussion about the tier 2 cities was also extremely encouraging. And today now we come to this where we talk about about how do we strengthen the enablers of the ecosystem. So while I would initially request and invite our two secretaries to give their opening remarks, the way we will structure it in the next 70 odd minutes that we have been given is to have the strong group that we have from the business to make a comment or two or a question after following two secretaries. The Raheja group we have there, Mr. Vinod Johera, Praveen Kumar from the Barclays, Chandra Prakash Balani from the AWS, and Dr. Rudra Pratap, the founder and Vice Chancellor of Lakshya University, Ankur Mittal from the Lois India, Sunil Gupta from the Yota Data Services, and Manoj Marwa of the EY. So this is a solid group, and short, crisp questions followed by maybe closing comments by our two secretaries. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, pleasure and honor to invite first Mr. Sunil Batwal, the Secretary, Department of Commerce, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, to give his opening remarks.
Chandrajit Banerjee always had this tendency to surprise it, because I was going through that and I thought Neeraj was supposed to come first and then I was supposed to speak. But that is the way it is. And my colleague, Secretary Telecom, Mr. Neeraj Mittal, all the distinguished panelists who are present here, all the distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. So, I think it's a very good opportunity that this GCC Business Summit has been organized, and it's a whole-day affair. A lot of secretaries must have also spoken, a lot of distinguished panelists must have also spoken. Today's session is about the enablers, and I will be discussing some of these enablers today, but I will focus on one enabler with which I deal. So, before I come to that enabler with which Department of Commerce deals, if you look at the GCCs, I think the enablers are already present in some of the cities in India, which has happened over a period of time. So everybody is aware, you must have heard about it, that firstly It is the city which is very, very important. And not only the city infrastructure for the people who live in that city, but also the IT infrastructure and the concurrent infrastructure which is required, maybe the data center, maybe the cloud services, maybe the network. That is one. The second, of course, is a high density of STEM professionals which should be available in that particular city. They should be living together over there. There should be, people should be available within the city. And I think, the STEM professionals, the way it has grown in this country, and particularly the way they have been clustered in some of the cities, I think that is very, very important factor which has given, which has attracted these GCCs to India and to these cities. Third, of course, is the ecosystem which we have created in terms of higher education and the middle skilled kind of education system. If I say it in 2 words, then it is IIT at the top and ITIs and polytechnics which are there, because I visited some of the GCCs and I found that it is teamwork. There is always a man at the top working in a team, but it requires a lot of teammates who may not be as equally qualified, but who can be guided and they can deliver. So you require a huge hierarchy of STEM professionals, but at the same time, other kind of professionals which will be working in that hierarchy and in that team. So, and perhaps one important enabler which many times is not thought that way, but which has made these GCC proliferate in the country and get attracted in the country, is the innovation ecosystem which we have created. And this innovation ecosystem is coming out of startups, innovation hubs, and the venture capital, which finances these innovations. So I think it is a combination of these 4, I would say. There may be some more, but in my view, it is a combination of these 4 enablers, which are definitely required if you have to attract GCCs, which are those companies which are innovative. In fact, if you look at the whole services sector, which I deal with in terms of exports, you will find that there was a phase when manufacturing comparative advantage of a country was seen, when trade theory was discussed, or when trade was discussed. But now, it is the services comparative advantage which has become equally important for countries to look at. The global trade is gradually moving into digital services. Global exports and imports are moving in terms of services sector. And these GCCs are becoming the hubs of not only providing the services component to the manufacturing companies, but also in themselves as services. They are independent on their own and they require an ecosystem which is innovative. In fact, when I was looking at the Draghi report, if you read that, some of you might have read that Draghi report, which EU Commissioner has written about what is happening with Europe. The first thing which they have come out is, and they are lamenting about that fact, is that Europe has not been able to focus on innovation in the companies. And the innovation is happening elsewhere. Maybe US, maybe China, maybe India, elsewhere. And in fact, the whole Draghi report talks about, and it is the same, I would say, Schumpeterian theory, where it is the innovation which leads a company. If you don't innovate, you die. If you don't innovate, you may no longer be in existence. So innovation has become a strong point, and the comparative advantage of a country comes from whether you can provide that innovation setup to a company or not. And that is what the companies are trying to do. Since I have been given 10 minutes, I will try to stick to those 10 minutes. Another enabler which we are trying to bring in this country, other than these 4 enablers which I just talked about. And that enabler is the free trade agreements. And that is, I will spend some time on that free trade agreements, how they are the enablers for the GCCs. So if you look at the free trade agreement today, which we are doing with the UK, which we have just announced, with European Union, which is going on, with US again, discussions are on, with several other countries in the world, things are moving. These are not the FTAs which are only confined to what you call traditional trade, which is just trade and tariffs, and that too only manufacturing. These FTAs today are very complex set of agreements. A very important part of these FTAs is the services sector. If you look at these chapters in the FTAs, how the services segments which are under the GATS agreement, they will be part of the FTAs. What will be the regulatory system in those services, including the FDI and the other regulatory practices? Those are being harmonized. Those are being looked at. There is an institutional mechanism within these FTAs which can look at that how the services sector between these 2 sets of partners will be harmonized, will be coordinated, will be sustained. And there are a whole gamuts of other facets which are related to the GCCs. And what are those? Unless and until you have an IPR regime which can work for you, you will always be concerned about that country. We are looking at the IPR chapters. We are looking at what will be the coordination mechanism in case the disputes arise. That is another area which we look at in FTAs. So FTAs these days are not only trying to look at the whole gamut of services sector, but also in terms of the regulatory harmonization between the 2 countries. And therefore, it is taking a lot of time when we do these FTAs. There are detailed discussions, detailed deliberations, detailed stakeholder consultation. For example, if you look at digital trade, then what will be those principles of digital trade which the partner countries have to adopt? If there is a data localization or data privacy laws, then how they will be looked at? That is another angle which we define in these FTAs. And what is the ultimate point of these FTAs? The ultimate point of these FTAs is that once these are signed, you will get the businesses, whether the businesses here or businesses abroad, they will get certainty about those regulations, because those regulations are not going to change unless and until you have agreed differently. And it gives certainty. So if an FTA with UK has been done, and let me just tell you that the UK FTA, India-UK FTA includes a chapter on innovation. If you look at the traditional FTAs, innovation was never discussed. But now these free trade agreements, they take up these matters, innovation, and there is a clarity. In fact, in UK FTA, we also have created a mechanism where there will be innovation working groups.
Examples of the FTAs, and thank you for really talking about it. And you mentioned about UK, and you mentioned about the EFTA part where you focused on the SMEs and the innovations there. The services sector, again, thank you for really highlighting the way it has played into the policy framework while we're really looking at the FTAs. And as I turn now to our Secretary from the Department of Telecom and Ministry of Communications, Following from what Secretary Thomas said, it will be great to listen to you and listen to you on building it up as to how there's an ecosystem coming, because he did mention about the communication as a part also when speaking about services. We spoke earlier about tier 2, tier 3 cities and how you are looking at bringing that connectivity into those cities, and be it the 5G or the satellite broadband and much of the rest of it, and what type of models you would really look at for and digital R&D. The other point, of course, one would look at is a sort of an always-on type of a thing with our GCC, which is much talked about during the course of the day, that is it. So with that, I hand it over to you for your remarks and address.
First to the timers, I don't exceed 10 minutes. So my colleague, Secretary Commerce from the dais, Chandra who I know for a very long time, many other colleagues here on the dais from the industry, the GCC industry, and all the guests here today. It is indeed a pleasure to be here today because I just met Arun Roy, who's Secretary Industries in Tamil Nadu, and when I was in Tamil Nadu as Secretary IT in 2021, we really started thinking about how to get the GCCs into Chennai because Bangalore was overflowing. And it's heartening to see that Tamil Nadu has succeeded in being one of the second magnet centers. And the trend is going to just continue because GCCs find what is required, as Sir just said about the enablers of GCC, very well established in India, be it talent, which is very, very critical, be it connectivity, which is excellent, the capability to innovate, the rule of law, strong IPR protections. All these things make India a very attractive destination. Telecom, which I represent, is a significant part of the digital infrastructure. And we somehow sometimes do not even feel that there is such an infrastructure because we take it for granted. Sometimes we feel and hear some news that some TSPs, some networks, somewhere in some small city has stopped working, and that becomes a big news because we have just become very used to it. But it is a very important enabler, and I will talk a little bit about what we are doing and how we hope that this increasingly exponential growth of GCCs will continue in India. Just to recall, some numbers which you might or might not be aware. We are the second largest market in the world with 1.2 billion consumers, roughly about 1 billion broadband users, 1 billion internet connections. If you look at the price, we are about 9 cents per GB. I don't know if anybody has a guess of what is the global average of data? That is the global average. Now that is a very significant enabler for any GCC because the data costs are so low. If you look at the speeds of broadband, we jumped from 119th position to 21st globally. Thanks to the Prime Minister's faith in our own domestic institutions to be able to get up and produce technologies which many countries have tried but failed. 2G, 3G, 4G has been developed by the rest of the world over 2 or 3 decades. CDOT, which is our domestic institution, developed it in say 2 to 3 years. It is already deployed across India in about 1 lakh towers, which was our target. The 3 or 4 important things which are required by us, by GCC, is compute, connectivity, storage, and all this comes with security. India also stands. The recent ITU Global Cybersecurity Index, we got 99.49 marks out of 100. We are amongst the top nations where the cybersecurity infrastructure, policies, response mechanisms, mitigations, all are in the top tier. So in my view, if you look at the enablers of GCCs as far as digital infrastructure is concerned, is pretty much the top class in India. But the problem I think GCCs are facing and will face is that they are concentrated in some cities. And as Chandrajit said, that going to Tier 2, Tier 3 will require infrastructure across the spectrum, which includes many things which the Commerce Secretary highlighted, including social infrastructure. But yes, the telecom infrastructure also has to be there. And we are, as we move forward, we have done several things to improve infrastructure of telecom connectivity, which includes the rollout of 4G and 5G. Recently, 3 companies have now the new licenses fully ready to commercialize, which will connect these Tier 2, Tier 3 cities and people who would work for these GCCs wherever they want to, whenever they want.
Nurture that talent to do cutting edge technology. Over the last 20 years or so, we've seen the real estate industry evolve dramatically, and the new 5.0 version has come post-COVID because we were struggling with lots of work from home and nobody's going to come back to work, etc., etc. So the products being designed are dramatically different now. And of course, a lot of that is thanks to the technology backbone, the last mile infrastructure that each of these cities have gone and provided, which is allowing for talent to migrate, nurture, and want to live and grow in these big cities. So while since the day has passed, all of us have been debating Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities and the potential of how Tier 2 cities have become Tier 1 cities, etc. I think it's a combination effort of each and every stakeholder who has to work very closely to build a certain critical mass which drives the ecosystem. So if I have to look inside out, and we have to build an IT park, which is primarily what commercial real estate has done, and India has almost 500 odd million square feet of relevant, credible stock, which is 80% occupied by tech companies. And we believe another 400 odd million will be needed in the next 5-7 years alone to take care of GCC demand. So that becomes a massive responsibility. But what that does is cumulatively, when you're building that ecosystem, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, we were building our own oasis, where we had to make sure right from water to electricity to everything else was being provided for, and we had companies flying down from New York and signing up transactions and putting their GCCs in an island environment. SEZs did a fantastic job of attracting GCCs to come into India. Those 10 years were phenomenal, and we saw 1 million jobs get created just by building SEZs. That actually built the backbone for GCCs to grow in India. What it has done now is we've moved way ahead in terms of the way talent is looking at picking on jobs. So to just give you small examples, if there's young talent coming and you're calling them for an interview, and they have to wait in a shabby manner inside a lobby when 1,000 kids have come for 100 seats of interview, half of them walk away. They say, I don't want to work in this environment because it's not taken care of. So a lot of their mindsets have changed, and they are looking at cutting edge tech, so they know what they want to do, what they want to achieve. That becomes really critical to ensure it's not just the last mile infra, but it's social infra, it's education, it's healthcare, it's collaborative training, because graduates that are walking out of technology colleges are finding themselves lost for knowledge because of the way AI is rapidly influencing the way they work in terms of technology. So they need to constantly relearn And that ecosystem is being provided by the GCCs that are coming and saying we want to nurture the talent. So just to end my little brief piece on this, I think in the next 5 years there will be a lot more needed on support from government as well as from the current ecosystem that's already built, whether it's education, whether it's financial services, whether it's all the tech, resource and training and learning. Only then will you see occupancy rise and more GCCs come down. We will build the best assets to make sure we can have them best occupied. But the rest of the ecosystem will have to support in all of these aspects.
Thanks for that comment. It is important that we look at the smart infrastructure, and you talked about it, your smart technology systems, and one of the main participants over here today has been Barclays, of course, and they have been giving great solutions in terms of these smart technologies, and I'll request Praveen Kumar, the Barclays CEO, to.
Thank you. Just to share with you, we are one of the 5 largest BFSI GCCs in India, presence across 5 cities, and almost a third of the global bank actually now is based out of India. So just, I just want to share a perspective from the viewpoint of large GCCs and sustainability of large GCCs. So I think there's a lot of conversation about attracting new GCCs, which clearly is super important for us as a industry, but equally sustainability of large GCCs in terms of the value that we provide our parent organizations, that bar is continuously being raised. And therefore, what are some of the challenges that we are facing in that space? I feel that the first one, we should really, think about talent, compliances and infrastructure as the sort of 3 dimensions. And on the talent front, the expectations on talent are rising dramatically. So particularly from a domain-aligned talent standpoint. So the market is so mature now that you want to look for not just people with banking or financial services experience, but people, for example, with credit underwriting or payments technology, or a specific experience which they can hit the ground running and add value to the enterprise. So I think just thinking about, when we think about the sort of phase, the next phase of the SEZ type framework, to incentivize specific industry verticals to go to certain locations. I think that would build domains or domain-aligned talent in those locations. So naturally it has happened in certain locations like Pune, Bangalore, Hyderabad, but I think the government can do something there, particularly at the intersection of AI, startup ecosystem in those domains, all sort of concentrated in a certain location, that would help in fostering that, more. And then, secondly on compliances, there is still, we do feel, of course, there's lots of compliances, bonding, the bonding of assets, etc. takes a long time, the transfer pricing, etc. I think that's all been talked about earlier today. But even state level policies which are different for each state. I'll give you an example. We are opening a center here in Gurgaon, and we started with the right intent that we want to ease the pain. We have about 8,000 people in NCR, and we want centers in Noida, and we want it to make it easier for people to work out of either of the 2 locations. But it's not possible because the labor laws are very different in Haryana versus UP. So your overtime policies, they're all designed for manufacturing industry, but they're applicable to us, and therefore leave policies, overtime policies are all very different. So I'm just giving an example of how that creates a friction point for us to now tag people to a certain location and not be able to provide that flexibility. So finally on infrastructure, I think the last mile infrastructure, I think talked about a little bit, but if you look at us as an industry, in no other location outside of India, we provide, as in the company provides transport to get to work, right? We as an industry provide comprehensively. I spend about 120 crores every year just to get people from homes to office, right? And that's a cost which is, all of us can save and actually funnel it for better work, innovation, etc. So the state infrastructure in terms of public transport, access from metro stations, etc., I think that needs to go up, because as our wage inflation goes up, we are struggling to sort of be competitive because that's an element of cost which I feel should fall away at some point, as the country matures. So I just pause there, but I think those are few areas just to sort of ponder over.
Thanks, Ravi, for raising some very fundamental and very useful issues. I'm sure we'll get time to put them into the report as well as also wait for our secretaries to even respond to that. But you also spoke about skill development and the way AWS has actually worked on, when one talks about cloud infrastructure and the type of cloud skills that they have worked upon. I'll turn to Chandra Prakash Balani, the head of AWS, to make a comment or raise a question to them.
Thank you, and thank you both ministers calling out cloud as a big piece of enablement for GCCs to be successful here. I'll urge you to think in terms of what is the value that you can drive for the global organization from India, right? That is basically deciding on the success of GCCs in India and how they're nurturing the talent and how they're growing their business, right? And when it comes to business, how do you improve your ROI? Is you either increase revenues, reduce costs, or improve customer experience or customer satisfaction. Right? Those are three big, simplistic ways you can increase value. I'll tell you how from AWS perspective we help our GCC customers in India drive that value, right? So increasing the revenue, we help in innovation, right? We share our secret sauce at Amazon, create the culture of innovation with our GCC customers in India. How can leaders in India create that culture where teams have the psychological safety, they have the technical skills to be innovating from India. We have programs both for builders where we help them in hackathons and building new ideas, but also for the leaders to be able to create that environment where they are creating the culture where innovation is happening from India. Right? When it comes to cost reduction, again we help in various programs where we train our customers on skills around automation, right? Skills around Gen AI these days, which can help in automate. It's not a one-time thing that you do it and you're done. But we're helping our customers in, let's say, mainframe modernization, in providing all the skills so that they are building their data strategy from India. They're driving the AI ML analytics as well as Gen AI from India. So helping builders build the skill, as well as then leaders in driving those strategies from India. We also go to an extent where we are even helping organizations in building that emotional intelligence and skills around how do you lead in the age of AI, right? So again, you can pick up whatever you find is relevant on how you want to drive value, or probably all three. But question, what is that you're doing from India that help you push up the curve on value creation from India? That is what will make India successful and continue to make India successful. I think we have come a long way that we can all, maybe a round of applause for all of you here in the room, right? We've come a long way, but to keep us going, I think we need to keep thinking on how we are creating value from India, and that's what we try to do at AWS.
So thanks, Chandra. All of us have heard about Plaksha University and the phenomenal work that is being done there, and the type of, we talk today a lot about academia.
As all of you know, that all enablers we are talking about, everything, infrastructure or whether physical, digital, whatever infrastructure, all of that on one side, without the real talent, none of that infrastructure works. So what you need is real new talent to power these GCCs. And all of you are aware of it. You are asking that give us future-ready engineers. Future-ready, people with future-ready skills. I talked about engineers because that's what we do, engineering education. Now, I'll first just tell you one minute about engineering education. Engineering has remained largely what started after World War II. the chassis of engineering education has been just World War II chassis. You know, you might change headlights, taillights, etc., but you know, the chassis is the same. We started in 21 and therefore we had an opportunity to completely rewrite what engineering education should be. That's what attracted me to go from Indian Institute of Science, from Bangalore all the way to Mohali in Plaksha. So how do you rewrite the playbook of engineering? What the future engineers look like? And those skills are very different. Not that older engineering graduates did not solve complex problems, but by the time they were given complex problems, they were in the Middle Ages. Whereas today, you ask engineers the moment they join companies that here is a challenge for you. It's a complex problem, solve it. How do you prepare graduates, fresh graduates for that? So this is where I had an appeal to GCCs here. See, we can train them in AI, ML, all the basics we can absolutely do, not a problem. We can make them fantastic stats analysts or data analysts, not a problem. There will be great AI engineers, not a problem. But when you want to solve complex problems, you need to see complex problems. Those problems don't live in universities, they live inside your companies. So can we partner with you to get real problems that come to the classroom, that come to students in terms of whatever, projects that they can do, and they can carry over in summer with you for internships, etc., etc. Can we do that? That's number one. Number two, request for GCCs. Why don't you take 2 months of sabbatical or a month of sabbatical and come to universities and teach them? You bring a wealth of knowledge. Now, sabbaticals are well known in academic circles. Every 6 years you take 1 year sabbatical, you go somewhere. We have broken that mold too, by the way. We give 2 month sabbaticals every year to faculty that go somewhere, learn something new, come back. Because now the turnaround time is much faster. So my appeal to GCC folks, all professionals here is, why don't you take sabbatical and come to academia? I'm going to give you the same thing that you tell your customers. Your satisfaction guaranteed or your money back. If you come to academia, you will be rejuvenated. Intellectually, it's a very different place, right? So please do that. We will benefit from it. Your future engineers, your future employees will benefit from it, and of course you will also benefit. So that's number 2 request from me. Number 3, even for retention, that I keep reading that there is a lot of problem of retention in GCCs. These kinds of partnerships with universities can always work in your favor to upgrade skills for your employees. We can offer lots of courses which are short-term courses. Short-term courses for your employees or for engineers to upskill very quickly. That's what we are specializing in today's day and age. How do you do something that you used to do over a semester in 1 month or in even 2 weeks? How do you do that? We can do that. So these are the 3 points that I wanted to make to you. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
We were doing some analysis around the network cost and the communication cost we have for LOS in US, and if we had to repeat the same thing in India, how much it will cost. So thank you, Dr. Neeraj. It was that if we had to do the same thing in India, it would be 50% cheaper than what we are doing in US. So Lowe's is a retailer, Fortune 50 retailer. We are probably one of the top 5 retail GCC in India. Around 35% of the corporate workforce is based out of India, 50% of the engineers are based out of India. I had a couple of things which you have to think about and look for the future is, first is that somehow we had to think about having an internet connection like Starlink, which is going to be really game changer for India too, because it's been a game changer in US, and I have seen that making a difference, not just to our associates but also to communities and our customers. Second, thinking about the power, we are talking about having more and more and more data centers, which will require huge amount of power. So maybe something think about micro nuclear reactor based or powered data centers. And third thing, which I just talked about earlier also during the lunch session, that today business is facing a little bit of uncertainties when it comes to GCC and tax and permanent establishment policies. Business wouldn't mind paying % more tax, but as long as there is significant amount of certainties. So clearing out some of those things, incentivizing GCC, which is creating the high value roles, global roles, then penalizing those GCC with higher tax. And for GCC group, my suggestion would be that we don't have to reinvent the wheel by each GCC. So for example, if somebody is doing, or look at few startups and they said that, okay, for development productivity, probably these 3 companies are the best, now choose from them. Not everybody has to do the same thing again and again. You can share the knowledge a lot more in deeper sense than just talking about how we are executing on finance jobs, HR jobs, marketing or technology jobs. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. That was very
Happy to be here. Just to give you an introduction, we run data centers in India. We have a large campus in Mumbai, we have a campus here in Greater Noida, and we have a campus in GCC. Besides running this large data center with lots of power, we have created a sovereign cloud, created by, designed by, completely operated by Indians. For many of the geopolitical reasons, there is a niche segment which actually wants to run on clouds, where data localization itself is not enough. The cloud ownership also has to be solved. And the third part for which we have sort of come into much more limelight in the last 2 years is AI. We all know ChatGPT came into our lives 2.5 years back. Suddenly AI was in the consumer hand on their mobile. So everybody started talking about it. And there was a big discourse in India at that time in government circles, in industry circles, that while India has got the best skill sets, maybe the second largest skill sets across the world, we have the best startup ecosystem. Of course, we have the best GCC ecosystem now. But what is the AI ecosystem in India? And frankly speaking, at that time, we realized that practically there was no AI ecosystem in India. There was no models being built here. There were no models fine-tuned here. And practically there was no inferencing of any models here. So there was a hosting of models here. So what came out very clearly was that if India has to build an AI ecosystem, like a US or like a China, the compute infrastructure will have to be built here for the ecosystem to start training their models here for geopolitical reasons, and also for serving our own use cases across agriculture, healthcare, education, and various other use cases. We'll have to build them with our own data sets, with our own language data sets. And that is where Jensen Huang, NVIDIA CEO, came, met Prime Minister, and a discussion came that NVIDIA has huge commitment to India, but somebody has to invest into the chips and build a cloud around NVIDIA chips. That is where we came forward. Since then, we have built a very large NVIDIA GPUs cloud infrastructure in India. If you just leave aside US and China, India probably has, and this will be surprising to you, India probably has the 3rd largest GPU infrastructure in the world now. 2 years back, practically there was no GPUs in India. Today, if you are following India AI Mission News, which is coming almost every second day in Economic Times, we have got more than 34,000 GPUs committed to government. And government is acting as, so India Mission is acting as a marketplace, where they are asking people like us to build infrastructure, build data centers, build GPUs, convert them into cloud service, give it at a very aggressive rate. Secretary Neeraj was talking about the telecom rates in India, which is like 9 cents, compared to a $2.2 across the world. You will be surprised that against a $10 to $15 per GPU hour rate, which is prevalent in most of the global markets, government was able to get a price from infrastructure providers like us, which was around $1.5. And after government giving a subsidy of around 40%, now Indian consumers are getting top-end GPUs at less than $1 per hour, which is practically 1/10 of what you will be getting in developed worlds. And when we are talking about these price points, no way we are talking about a lesser quality. We are talking about a top-end infrastructure which is In NVIDIA's term, they call it NVIDIA reference architecture. We are talking about their Hopper GPU, we are talking about their Blackwell GPUs, something which we are bringing in the next 2-3 months. So in India today, my message to GCC is, you are doing skill sets work here, you are no more doing a BPO work here, you are doing designing work here, you are doing engineering work here, you are owning platforms here. So you cannot only outsource your skill sets, you need to create platforms, you need to train your AI models here, and you need to host them here for the entire rest of the world to access for inferencing purposes. And that will be real product ownership from India. The infrastructure, the top end infrastructure is here available in India at highest quality and the lowest possible cost. That is my message. It's very much available there and you can use it. Thank you.
Again, from the panel, is someone who's been involved with the GCCs from the very outset and beginning. And Manoj Marwa of EY, why probably you are the last speaker is because you are an expert in capturing what happened and putting it in a nutshell while you give your own views. And after you do that, I'll turn to Atul Singh, please.
Sure, Mr. Bandley, I completely agree. You want to save the best for the last. I'll take that compliment. Firstly, I would say I'm so glad to see government leadership in full force here. I think I and Praveen were chatting. I think I've been engaged in GCCs for 18 years. I think as industry we keep on talking among our eco chambers, these are the issues. I think it gives me immense confidence that government leadership is not only present but the secretaries are making notes. So I think it gives me immense confidence that a lot of the things we're talking about will see the light of the day. And I think they started laying out the CII, the national vision to have 5,000 GCCs. From our vantage point, I can clearly say what brought us the first 2,000 GCCs is not going to get us the next 3,000. And the reasons are competition. I know sitting in India, given you have 1.4 billion people, every perhaps fourth person is an Indian, we think we are the center of the world. But when you go to Philippines, Mexico, Eastern Europe, all the geographies are coming hard, island. So competition is intensified. People have looked at the secret sauce. It's going to be very different. Second is AI. I don't know if a lot of people added on, but the kind of talent and Professor mentioned about engineering chassis. So chassis will have to change in a big way. And then secondly, the last piece I would say why this is so different is because of geopolitics, tariffs, FTAs got talked about. So it's a very different era. So with this, I think I want to lay out a few suggestions and a couple of questions to the Secretary. So first is, I think, given the competition we are facing, we all very fondly remember the Incredible India campaign. I believe Dr. Khan, the Niti Aayog, he is the one who coined it. Maybe I think from an India perspective, we have a lot of state campaigns. We have the Hyderabad campaign, we have a Tamil Nadu campaign. We literally saw a Shark Tank happening between states out here come to us. Maybe it's about time to have an India campaign, and that's where the government could support us on similar lines as Incredible India, positioning India as the AI capital of the world or future of work. That's the first piece I want to talk about. I think the second piece is, traditionally if you look at 90% or 95% of the GCCs in India, they come from English-speaking markets, Americas or UK predominantly. I think if we have to look at the next 3,000, we need to attract GCCs from newer markets like Japan, like ASEAN, like Nordics. So how can we use the muscle of, we talked about FTAs, how can we use the muscle of Government of India, the trade deals, the FTAs, the trade missions to actually position India into these newer markets? And I can tell you from personal experience, I was in Milan, I never expected an Italian bank, even though we couldn't understand each other's language, talking about setting up a 1,000-seater AI hub out here. So I think those barriers are getting broken, so I think that's the second one. The third is, I think, as Indians, I don't know, because out here, I think, if you look at our IT industries, we always lament the fact that we don't innovate enough, we have a service-oriented architecture. But if you look at India per se, I think the way we've innovated on UPI, UID, you look at our retail banking infrastructure, the digital stack, the agri stack, the level of innovation which has happened domestically will be surprising when you visit Europe and US, we are much ahead. So how can Government of India, and earlier in the day talked about that board meetings are happening here in GCCs, global CXOs are coming here. How can Government of India help take this innovation of India, it literally apps on our brand, and leverage the GCC network to make them global? So I think these are my three suggestions, and my two questions would be, I was it will be wonderful to hear about the 1 lakh crore R&D fund. It will be great to know from the secretary, like as GCC, given we don't do product development, while you have some engineering centers, is there a sort of a GCC pact to that, leveraging that 1 lakh crore R&D fund? That will be great. And then from the telecom secretary, given all the geopolitical tensions which have been happening, we talked about submarine cables, but maybe the audience and even I would love to understand the BCP posture of India when it comes to our connectivity. Many times, all kind of rumor mongering happening. We only have one cable. Whatever it goes down, India goes down. So, if there is any posture which can be clarified by the government of India that how safe is our digital connectivity, I think that would be great. Yeah.
So that was a very strong power-packed session, and we have had two ways. I mean, one is of course we had the government's opening up to say what's the scope and what the achievements have been so far and why India could move ahead further. We have had many advice coming from the panel and thoughts and asks to the GCCs as well as questions to the panelists. So just 10 minutes is what the time shows, and we have two of our secretaries, and I'll start again, no surprises this time, with Mr. Dr. Neeraj Mittal for Secretary Charabha.
As I said in my opening remarks, we do have about 18 cables landed into the country. It's about I think 160 terabits per second. It's about 80% utilized. There are two new cables which are coming in as we speak, because the growth of data with all these AI-based data centers increasing in the country. We also have a movement by many countries to establish something called like sovereign data centers. There was a concept of that as well. Then there are companies who would like to come and establish data centers which we just process and the data goes out. We don't do consumption here of any services. So with that, the data in and out will be really high, and we are thinking of making this infrastructure resilient. So we have we are a co-chair in the International Submarine an organization, and we discussed there as to how when there are cable cuts, India does not own a cable repair ship, and it is several months before a cut is restored. So that is one of the big points where we are working. We are trying to see if there is a kind of insurance which we can create and lease capacity so that the turnaround times are reduced. We have significant satellite capacity which is on standby. They are also roughly about 20-25% right now is unused. With LEO coming in, we would have additional capacity. So I can rest assure you that we are not on a single fault basis that the network of the country is on.
Raised and also answered some of these very pertinent issues which we are facing if we have to develop these GCCs. In fact, I get reminded of the book which I had read when I was a student. That was, I think many of you might have read that. That was Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. And there was this John Galt who, then he got frustrated, and then he came out with a concept of a city where he collected all the engineers, architects, scientists, everybody together, and then they built a city like that. So I think that is the kind of ecosystem which we need to create. I think everybody has to come together because as Neeraj rightly mentioned, that although in terms of the cost of IT infrastructure, we have reduced cost tremendously, and we are one of the, I think, the very low cost economy in that terms. But perhaps, there are other facets which everybody talked about, be it the living cost over there, be it the residential cost over there, be it the other kind of facilities, transportation facilities, and the structure of the city itself. Cost of doing business. It is not ease of doing business, but it is cost of doing business which has to be looked at. In fact, I feel that many of our concepts are related to manufacturing. And when we look at, say, IT parks or industrial parks or cities, we look at it from, or if we talk about the economies of scale, we talk from the reference of the manufacturing setup. I think the services setup is an entirely different concept, and as rightly pointed out, that it requires a kind of ecosystem where not only the hard infrastructure but also the soft infrastructure is very, very important.
The rest, please remain seated.